Good day and welcome everyone to my channel and today's video about my league race in PSGL F12 on PlayStation. As you can see, we are in Suzuka round number 5. The race took place last Thursday. I will race as a reserve, and yeah, that's why I only raced in Spa before as a reserve. We finished P7, and today we try to get even better points and a better result here in Suzuka. I personally like Suzuka very much, a very technical track, and a lot is normally going on in Suzuka, as you can spin your car pretty easily. Unfortunately, PlayStation didn't record my quali and race start. It's not bad regarding quali because I had the weather glitch where it said rain for the race, but it only showed dry conditions and sun in the weather toggle when you have the timeline. So I was very unsure about my setup, but I selected a dry setup in the end because I thought, well, we at least have a dry patch. We're gonna start without further ado on lap 1, turn 1. And as you can see, we're quite shit mixed because it is raining, it's intermediate conditions, but we selected a dry setup. So weather forecast before the start said about 90% of the race rain, and the last few laps it will be dry on track, but yeah, you never know with the Codemasters and EA, of course. So we started in P15 and we're trying to somehow make our positions for the good points results. We're already up to P14 now. BDE right in front of us now at the exit of Degner 2, and we're up another 2 positions. Oopsie daisy, another one. So P11 after the first lap. Not too bad, but now we have to focus on consistency and a race without any mistakes, of course. And now coming up to 130R. Never done that in the rain, to be honest. As you can see, it's a little bit sketchy. Very, very cautious here. Coming up to the bus stop chicane. Of course, the racing line is helping, which is allowed in the league we're driving in. And down the main straight to finish lap 1. Gained 4 positions here. Very, very happy with that for the moment. Now my focus is completely on finding my rhythm that we just lost here. Fortunately, not a warning, because we have yellow flags again. So my focus is now on getting a rhythm, getting some temperature in my tires, and just get used to the dry setup that I have on. Just move around and feel the track a little bit out, feel lines out, and see if we can gain some time on the guys ahead to, yeah, just get some points. That's the main goal, just to stay consistent and get some points. And they're bunching up in front of us, like heavily, 3 or 4 cars that is. Janos Luis, Basel, I think Volcano is also in there, as the Alpine comes almost to a stop right in front of us. Going up a little bit uphill, but very, very sketchy. I'm only using as ERS for the second here, otherwise it's just too dangerous. You'd just lose your car, and at that stage of the race on lap 2 was not worth the risk really. My focus was just on keeping enough ERS, because DRS obviously is not enabled. So we're focusing on raw pace and ERS if needed. And Mike sets the fastest lap below 42, I think it was. And we come across the line and put in a 145. So you see that the leaders have massive pace right now compared to me. Just behind that pack in P10 now, as Janos Luis in front of us has pitted. He, yeah, maybe obviously has damage to his car. So we have a little bit of clean air. Just like 1.3, 1.4 seconds. Volcano is now ahead of us. He's got the McLaren ahead of him. And that fight goes for a few laps. And our goal is just to stay as close as we can behind to gain an advantage if something happens. At this point, I'm already thinking about my strategy, because we know 90% of the race will be in wet conditions. So I'm already thinking, how long do these inters go? And at that point, I thought, if there is no safety car, I have to protect my tires and just stay calm and smooth and get those tires almost until the end of the race to switch to softs then, as we have our first virtual safety car. And the first big thing in the race, the delta is just not going down. As you can see, it's around 11 seconds and it's not going down, and we're on race pace. No one is slowing down. We're on race pace and the delta is plus 11, plus 12 seconds, which is a complete joke. Whatever EA Codemasters have done with the game is absolute dog shit. That makes no sense. A virtual safety car on race pace, but we'll have a few of those moments during the race, and you will see them all, of course. And right now we know we can still push. We don't need to think about a drive-through penalty, so we're just pushing. We're going further, wait for the virtual safety car to end, because it makes no difference at the moment when it comes to pace and lap times. So we just try to keep the gap to the guy in front, as the virtual safety car is now ending on lap 4 of 27, green flag. No one gets a drive-through, so there's obviously a safety car delta glitch, as we now head on to lap 8, because nothing really happened between lap 5 and lap 8. And we see that Quadrant and Volcano are fighting. Volcano now with a 3-second time penalty for running wide in turn 1, which happened to us too. But fortunately, we got away with no warning whatsoever. And at that point, I realized in the high 70s, my tires were pretty good. And at that point, a full car safety car comes out, where I found some confidence to push. But we also find out something different. The delta is around 5 to 6 seconds, and it's not going down. It's full car safety car, and the delta glitch is still there. It's bloody horrible. And at that point, it's crucial for us to think about the strategy, because we are in P10 right now. Everything is looking fine for the moment. We have a safety car, so we all bunch up, and there's only advantages for us because the whole pack comes together. At this point, I have to think about my tires. As you can see, we're around 19-20%, something like that. So I thought, it's lap 8. I use 2 to 3% per lap. I won't go until the end. So I decided to pit on this lap for fresh inters and just go for moves if I can, because the gap behind to Funky is more than 40 seconds. Even with the safety car glitch, I will make it out of the pits ahead of him. So it's basically a free pit stop for us, and of course we're gonna take it. Watching the pit lane entry is the most crucial part here. Immediate turn in, as I'm driving the Red Bull, fresh into zone, fucking up the restart there. Good job, happens. And as you can see, we are in P9 now, because Basil in front of us, the McLaren, also pitted, and he probably had wing damage which needed to be repaired, and we gained 1 position in the pits. So we're jumping onto a point like pretty late in that safety car phase, lap 11 already. We're warming up our tires, and all of a sudden, a freaking rookie mistake. We half spin onto the grass in Spoon, and luckily we only lose the position to the McLaren. So absolutely embarrassing. No other words for that. I had some poopy in my pants, but Yeah, our shit just happened. So we are in P10 again. Lost one position, but luckily gained 2 positions back from the guys who overtook us. The only goal at that point for me was to come back on track immediately. So get the positions back as we get to the restart now. And the gap behind is around a second, so no threat from behind. So I thought, let the guys in front fight a little bit. We just stay where you are, get the tires warm, and see where we go from there.
Okay, clear.
So watching the fight ahead of us pretty closely, Mike is in the mix there, who was leading the race. He pitted also for fresh inters, is now in P8, and we hope that something happens ahead of us so we can jump a few cars maybe without getting involved in any risky situations. Coming up to the hairpin, really tricky section here in the wet and Suzuka. Need to be really careful on the throttle in the acceleration zone as we are moving ahead to our favorite corner on the safety car. And Quadra now leaving the track, coming back on track right in front of us, but much more straight line speed than us, which was pretty surprising because we were on a dry setup. That means that he probably also was on one, but couldn't care less. We had to focus on not crashing and gaining positions at the same time. Now make the jump one up further to lap 13 of 27 as Quadrant leaves the track again. Going a little bit too wide, but staying ahead of us. No chance to attack in the S's, of course, and no overtaking spot, especially in the rain. The grip is just not there. As we're almost halfway through this race. Coming up to Degna 1, Degna 2, both pretty tricky in the rain. Had a huge problem with getting the gears here right. Gear 5 felt good, but on the traction a little bit nasty because the revs were pretty high. Gear 6 was safe, but felt pretty slow. Yeah, pretty nasty. But it is what it is. Yellow flags again. And Jeff tells us there's no safety car, and all of a sudden there is another safety car. And this is a very crucial point in the race, because as we all know, there was the prediction for the dry track at the end of the race. And as we have another safety car, and of course the Delta glitch again, people might be thinking about pitting early for dry tires. But at this point I was pretty sure that I'm not going to pit because it's still too wet, it's raining, but we see that actually a lot of guys are pitting. Would make a huge jump into P4, and at that point I was so confused that I wanted to get a weather report, but I clicked something else. I was just totally confused that so many guys were pitting, and yeah, that was just at that point so unrealistic to get onto dry tires because it was still raining. You see the track is still wet, it's clear intermediate conditions, and of course we wanted to know what are these guys doing. So we look up in the race director and we see that almost every one of them pitted for dry tires, for mediums and hards. But to be honest, just get it realistic. If you are on dry tires in those conditions, and you come out of the pits with fresh tires that are 70 degrees cold, how do you warm them up in wet conditions? It makes no sense, and that's why we stayed out. That was the only reason. And we're now up to P3 because Mike, who was in P2 at that point, decided to also pit for dry tires, which was, as I've already said, like pretty unrealistic at that point in the race. It was still raining, not heavily as you can see, but just a little bit, and that's enough sometimes. So we checked the race director again to see what Mike really did, and he pitted for dry tires. Couldn't believe it.
Safety car in this lap. Safety car in this lap. Let's make sure those
So we
tyres
now
are up
jump
temperature.
to
Remember,
the
there's no
end of
overtaking
lap
until the
16,
timing
which
line.
means the
Stay in
safety
position
car
until the green
will
flag
be
is
coming in. We are in P3. Very, very good position, because in my mind there was no chance I'm gonna pit for another set of inters. The next pit stop will be for dry tires at the end of the race. So for us it was just all about defending our position, because now it is for a podium as a reserve driver. That was huge at that point for me. So I was a little bit nervous, to be honest, but at the same time I felt quite confident of those tires
Okay, clear.
and in these conditions, as Quadrant always took a pretty wide line into turn 1. Don't know why. Kind of compromised his race. My teammate is in P1, so great team result at that point. P1 and P3 for Red Bull here in PSGL, as my main goal now was to stay in P3 for the moment and warm up my tires, get them up to the high 70-degree section, because that's when I felt most confident around this track in the wet. And you can see that there are a few corners on the track where we gain a lot of time on quadrant, but it was never enough. It was not enough to really go for the overtake without taking a huge risk. And now we close the gap pretty closely. Now we use ERS, because you now think, well, that could be it, but he's also using ERS and he's actually a little bit quicker. Going around 130R, losing a little bit of speed here. He's braking pretty early for bust up. I say bust up, that spot for the Casio triangle. Get that shit wrong, but yeah, teammate in P1 sets the fastest lap. We are still in P3. There's some pressure from behind from Maritz, who was really, really quick in the wet, no doubt about it. But he has a 3-second time penalty to his name, which can be crucial. But yeah, his pace was phenomenal that night. Was really feeling it. Maybe also setup, which was completely directed to those conditions, as we get another virtual safety car and another virtual safety car delta glitch. At that point it was really annoying, because there was basically no time on the safety car or virtual safety car that you could really pit and gain an advantage. It was just keep going, and it's ending after 3 corners. It's completely ridiculous, makes no sense at all. But we fucked it up a little bit, because the gap to Quadrant is now a second and Maritz is 2 tenths behind us, and now we need to defend 4 position. We start to push with ERS now, because we have a lot and we saved a lot during the whole race. I was pretty confident, and out of 130R he gets a huge exit and shows himself down the inside. I leave him just enough space. At the same time, he tricked me. He tricked me into that mistake to leave him the space, take a different line into the chicane, and he had a better exit and went side by side with me a little bit quicker in a straight line, and at that point he was down the inside. So yeah, it was no sense. It made no sense to me to defend that position at that moment. He was just that little bit quicker, and it was all fair play. I'm a reserve, he's a regular, so there was no point in fighting for that position at that point in these conditions. Just made no sense. So for me it was clear he has the penalty. I stay behind as long as I can and gain from that penalty P3 back. So yeah, not the best situation. I got tricked there, got trapped, and I fell for it. But we already think ahead. You see, we changed our downforce to 33, put it up to 38 for the wet conditions, and we're going down to 33, and now we change to soft tires because it's lap 19, which means 8.5 laps to go. The rain has almost stopped, and it's only a matter of time until the track dries out and we pit for dry tires. So I prepared everything while I had the time to, as Maurits and Quadrat go through 130R side by side. Maurits keeping the nose in and making the move on him for P2, and at that point I was panicking a little bit because I knew Maurits had the pace, and now he is already up to P2 and Quadrat is between us, and Quadrat was a little bit slower than me, and I never found a way to overtake him. So the worst nightmare at that point was to stay behind him, be basically trapped behind him and don't get the position. That was worst case scenario at that point. But yeah, with 7.5 laps to go, P4, not the worst result to be honest, and Maurits still had that penalty, so everything to play for from here on. Nothing really changed. And we still have in mind that the track will dry out and we will get on soft tires, and we have a dry setup on, so we basically have an advantage here going through the hairpin. Still behind Quadrat, and yeah, at that point I got a little bit desperate. I just didn't know what to do. I used some ERS here and there. I gained time in places where I couldn't overtake him, and I didn't really know when and how to set up the trap for him because the straight line speed was ridiculous. And I thought, let's just push and see what happens if we really get close. And as you can see in 130R, we just tried something and really pushed him to see if he crumbles under pressure. But yeah, he was pretty resistant. Nothing really happened. Down the main straight using ERS again, showing ourselves there, but just not enough, as we have yellow flags again and we're approaching a back marker. I think that was actually Mike who was at one point leading the race. He completely, he had nightmare pit stops. He switched for dries, for wets, for dries again. That was just bloody horrible for him, to be honest. And we still need to get past Quadrat. There was no way around that, as we're heading into the last phase of that race, lap 21 of 27, as he does a mistake. And now we see our chance here, going down the inside. I have the outside for the hairpin. We go deeper, but a tight line to not give him a lot of space. Side by side, now we have the inside. All of a sudden, bah! There's a hit from Quadrat, who probably lost a little bit of traction there, but we don't care. No damage and the gain position, P3 finally. And now we can start to drive our own race without having him in front and without being distracted. So Maurits is now 3 seconds ahead with the 3-second time penalty, and huge thing now, DRS is enabled, and we all know what that means. It's time for dry tires. So we come in through the chicane and we stay out. We're jumping ahead to lap 22, just one lap later. And we see that Maurits now overtook our teammate. We didn't pit because it was still too wet, but we see that the rain is gone. And it seems like that the track could dry out within the last, like next 2 or 3 laps, something like that. And yeah, at that point we just needed the pit stop because Maurits had the penalty. He's now in P1, so he's now flying. He has clean air. My teammate is in P2, and the bad thing is, if he pits, I can't pit because we will double stack. So yeah, pretty tricky. Not a good situation. Although being in P3, which was at that time pretty good, and we are gaining on our teammate, and that's a thing that brought some thoughts to my mind, because we're still on intermediates and I'm gaining on my teammate. I gained more than half a second in sector 1 and sector 2 on my teammate, but I'm selecting to pit on this lap for dry tires because yeah, DRS is enabled. Jeff is telling me that it's drying out, so everything is pointing into the direction of getting fresh soft tires on, make them work for the last 3 or 4 laps and push really hard to get those guys when the track is really dry. And we see that our teammate is pitting now, so we obviously don't pit because we don't want to double stack, and we stay out. And that was a crucial moment in that race, because now on lap 24 we won't pit. If you pit at the end of lap 24, you basically have 3 laps ahead of you, and the first lap of those 3 is your out lap on 70-degree cold soft tires. So you only have two laps left to really push. And yeah, it wasn't great at that moment because I thought my teammate would be rushing and coming pretty quickly closer to us. But you see at the end of lap 25, my teammate is nowhere near, as Daza now retires from the race. Lap 26 of 27, my teammate is nowhere near. Napol in P5 is 13 to 14 seconds behind, and my teammate hasn't even caught up to him. So yeah, at that point I realized, okie dokie, we're gonna finish on those set of intermediates. And I wasn't really mad about it. Like, you see the tire temperatures going up to 87 degrees, which is pretty high, but the traction was still there. My car wasn't sliding around. I felt a little bit more understeer and oversteer, but the tires were around 40 to 50%. So nothing really bad, just the normal things that happen towards the end of a race. And good thing for us is Maurits in P1 has still the 3-second time penalty. Bad thing is he's now 6 seconds ahead, so P1 is pretty unrealistic. But P3 Quadrat also has a 3-second time penalty now. He's 1.5 to 1.6 behind, so we're pretty safe in P2, and that was the goal now, to keep P2, to get it over the line, and to hopefully not lose the car on a drying out track, basically. You can see the rain is completely gone, only some moist patches, nothing else. Track pretty dry, and I just try to stay on the racing line, even in the straight line, just to cool down my tires a little bit. You can see now 86 degrees as we enter now the last lap of the race, and we're setting personal best lap times in almost dry conditions on used intermediates. This reminded me a little bit of Turkey with the infamous Interslick. That was kind of the moment when I realized those Inters are pretty much done, but they still feel pretty good, as my teammates now set the fastest lap. But on the last lap, to be honest, yeah, it's not enough. And you can see Napoli is now up to P4, Funky P5. My teammate is not close to Funky. He's not overtaking him. So it was the right choice to stay out on Inters. We didn't really go for the move to stay out, but it was the right choice in the end. And we don't care how it came. It's just happened, and it's good for us. As we now come in to Spoon for the last time. Hopefully not spinning here. Just always a tricky thing. You see, we're short shifting to not get the spin, and it was very surprising to me that I got a green first sector. As you can see now, we also get a green second sector on almost dry conditions with intermediates. That was pretty insane. You can see I'm braking very, very early, short shifting very early just to get that car over the line, and we make it with our personal best time, a 38.7 I think that is, and that is P2 in PSGL's race in Suzuka. And fortunately we also got drive of the day. So here we have the final results. Bad quality, unfortunately, but yeah, finished P2, came from P15, and yeah, that was a pretty awesome race. A lot of patience I needed to show, which is not my strength, but that was pretty great. And in the end, beautiful race, beautiful strategy. The game, yeah, is a thing that needs to be talked about in other forums and discussions, but yeah, we made it. P2, great results, and I'm very, very happy with that. Yeah, that was it for tonight in PSGL and Suzuka, and hopefully we have the chance to reserve also next week when we are heading to, I think behind it is, I'm not sure, I don't even know what track. No, I think it's Monza, but yeah, we'll see what happens there if we have the chance or get the chance to race. Unfortunately, Infamous wasn't able to race tonight. He's also racing in F12 together with me, which is really great. Unfortunately, he couldn't join tonight, and yeah, hopefully you see us both on track next week. Thank you very much for joining, for just watching the video, for whatever, for leaving a comment, for doing whatever you want. Don't like it, don't subscribe, but if you do, I don't give a fuck. So on this note, we will end it, and yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and see you next week. Take care.